Will you all please join me in Gassho and repeat the Nembutsu with me? Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandats, namandats, namandats. Good morning, everyone. And welcome to our Sunday service for March 10th. Before I begin my Dharma talk, I have a question for all of you. Are you all awake? Happy daylight savings time. As you all know, this is the time where we all lose an hour of sleep by having to push our clocks forward at 2 a.m., which, I don't know, that seems like an arbitrary time. We always, for our family, we before we go to bed, we just push the clocks forward so we don't have to wake up at 2 a.m. to push the clocks to 3 a.m. But I'm certain, like myself and everyone else, we all woke up this morning just a little bit more tired, or at least realizing that we had to come to service, or that we all came to service, we came here a little bit more tired. So I certainly hope that we are all able to stay awake during the Dharma talk, but if you choose to do as Kuwahara Sensei, my mentor Kuwahara Sensei says, sleep meditation, that is okay. But for the Dharma School students, and especially for the Dharma School talk, I would like to start with another question of the day. We'll look at these two statements here. For those of you who cannot see it because you are sitting so far in the back, the first statement says, it's okay to make mistakes. The second statement says, sometimes we make mistakes and that's okay, and that is okay. So the question I have is, which statement is correct, or which statement is more preferable? So at first we might think, well, there's virtually no difference between the two statements, right? There's two. It's okay to make mistakes. Sometimes mistakes happen and that's okay. They seem like the same thing. However, just to make an argument, or in my opinion, but I think that the second one is the better statement. Sometimes we make mistakes and that is okay. Why statement 2? Why is statement 2 better than statement number 1? Well, believe it or not, there actually is a Jodo Shinshu reason behind why I chose statement number 2. Shinran Shonin, our founder, had a very important message for us: to be honest about who we are. We are not perfect, and we sometimes make mistakes. But he also taught, because of our imperfect selves, Amida Buddha helps us. We all need a helping hand at times, and Amida guides us in our daily lives to teach us about wisdom and compassion. Now here, I'm going to talk a little bit about the difference between the two statements. The first statement, it's okay to make mistakes, sounds fine in itself, and I believe that there really isn't anything wrong with the first statement. There is nothing wrong with saying it's okay to make mistakes. However, it could be implied that we do not do our best, or at least that it's okay not to do our best. This isn't to say that we should always be perfect and that we're not enough, or without perfection. But it is to say that but it is to say sometimes I think that, it's okay to make mistakes, so it might give us a reason or an excuse to not do our very best when it comes to performing a task, or when it comes to performing a ritual, or when it comes to performing perform schoolwork. So before we even do an action, if we always say it's okay to make mistakes, we may not try as hard, or we may not do as hard. But the second statement sounds a little better. Sometimes mistakes happen, and that's okay. This implies that at least we have done the very best that we can possibly do. In our daily lives, we should always try and strive to do the best that we can, the best that we can, whether it be driving to work, performing our work duties, performing schoolwork, listening in class, all of these things. We should try to do our best. However, it is true that we are not perfect, and sometimes we either make mistakes or we forget something. At times, it cannot be helped, and especially after daylight savings time and we lose 1 hour of sleep and we're all a little bit tired. But in Jodo Shinshu, we always attempt to do our best. However, we also realize that we are imperfect beings. In Jodo Shinshu teachings, we have to realize that just because we accept that we are not perfect doesn't mean that we don't try or that we don't attempt to do our best. One example of this, of course, would be when we practice an instrument. Of course, we may make mistakes. And the same thing with chanting, the same thing with a sport. You're not going to, unless you're like Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, you're not going to perform this perfect action when you first start something. It takes practice and repetition and constant working. This isn't, of course, to say that we will ever be perfect or that we will ever have a perfect score, but we should always endeavor to do better. Sometimes I think that the fact that we are Jodo Shinshu can lead to misunderstandings of our teachings. For Dharma school students, for our Dharma school students, it is true that we have to accept the fact that we are not perfect. But that doesn't mean that we're not enough or that we're not good or that we're not contributing to a major part of work. In conclusion, we must always be willing to learn. I'd like to actually end my Dharma School Dharma talk with a quote from the Dalai Lama. When you talk, you are only repeating what you know. When you listen, you learn something new. For all of us, especially young people, but old folks as well, people of all ages, we like to display what we already know, including myself. Even with the best of intentions, we can sometimes fall short. And so my last message for all of us Dharma School students is be willing to learn more and improve. This is something I have to do myself as well. Just because I wear robes doesn't mean that I am perfect. Just because I wear robes and I'm able to chant on the Onaijin doesn't mean that I am at a higher level than you are. But I should always remember, and I even made some mistakes chanting Amida Kyo as well. But this doesn't mean that I stop chanting. This doesn't mean that I give up. This doesn't mean that I stop trying. I think that all of us Dharma school students, especially all of us who really listen to the Buddhist teachings, should endeavor to live by it and learn by it on a daily basis. So with this in mind, Dharma school students, and of course with everyone else, it's okay, everyone else, while we may initially say it's okay to make mistakes, we should also say, and probably say more, mistakes happen sometimes, and that's okay. We should always try to do our best. I think sometimes that when we are able to perform a task and we look at the result and we are able to look at things and how they're done, we sometimes think to ourselves, I could have done better. Or when we complete a task, we look at the result and we say, I could have done better. I think this is not necessarily a bad thing. But I think we should also realize that we should forgive ourselves as well. So do the best that you absolutely can, but also sometimes mistakes happen, and that's okay. Please join me in Gassho. And repeat the Nembutsu with me. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandats, namandats, namandats. Will everyone please join me in Gasho as I recite the words from our founder, Master Shinran Shonin. It is like offering more wine before the person has become sober, or urging him to take even more poison before the poison has abated. Here's some medicine, so drink all the poison you like. Words like these should never be said. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandats, namandats, namandats. Good morning, everyone. So I think my initial intention for today's service probably didn't work as well as I hoped it would. I picked Amida Kyo, especially with the setaku and the clicking, because I hope it might keep us awake and keep us going. But unfortunately, I think I might have made you all more tired. So I hope that we're able to stay awake. But starting today, especially with the adult Dharma talk, I'd like to talk about maybe some of the frustrating things that we might feel about Jodo Shinshu doctrine. And it is true. The Jodo Shinshu teachings and doctrine can be difficult. And we always seem to be on the razor-thin edge between right and wrong, don't we? So this picture that you see here is the famous picture or the famous image that Master Shandao talked about, where he talks about the person or the lone traveler traveling on the white path. And you notice that there is a river of fire and there is a river of water. There are like bandits and animals, rushing to kill the person. And the way forward is to Amida Buddha's Pure Land. And I think this image makes a lot of sense, especially since we're going to be talking about Ohigan in a few weeks, right? But when you look at that white path, you notice it's very, very thin, isn't it? It's very, very thin. And this is because the Jodo Shinshu teaching and path can be a bit difficult. We like it when we have large sidewalks, don't we? So the sidewalks outside the temple and across the street, they're nice and wide, plenty of space for a lot of people. But when we talk about the white path or the path of Jodo Shinshu, it can be very, very thin. And this has often led to misunderstandings, difficulties in the teaching, and even misinterpretations of the teaching. There always seems to be a razor-thin edge of where we walk. And that comes from the rhetoric of saying, well, we're imperfect beings, we're Bombu beings, we won't be enlightened by our own powers in this lifetime. But at the same time, we're saying, but that doesn't mean that you get to commit harm, and that doesn't mean that you get to do bad things freely without consequence as well. And so this is where I think the razor-thin edge can very much exemplify actually the toughness or the difficulties in the Jodo Shinshu teaching. But if we are going to be honest and realistic about this teaching and this understanding, isn't that the same with real life as well? Isn't life kind of like that as well? The decisions that we make, the choices that we make, the actions that we do, isn't that the same thing? We sometimes stress over which decision to make, which way to turn. And each way could have its own consequence or benefit, and that, I think, is also how life truly is. In our teaching, Amida Buddha's wisdom and compassion constantly works for us, for our benefit. Yet, as stated before, that shouldn't be an excuse to commit acts of harm. Shinran Shonin, our founder, accepted his own humanity, at the same time not surrendering to the darkest part of it. So when Shinran Shonin, as stated in previous Dharma talks, trained on Mount Hiei for 20 years, he came to the realization that he was no closer to enlightenment than when he started. Yet at the same time, realizing that there were parts of himself that he just could not abandon. There were parts of himself that he just could not fix, like some of his base desires. This didn't mean that he just went on this binge and this spree, right? So the same thing in terms of real life examples. Now, of course, I personally love soda. I love orange soda, I love ginger ale, I love all different types of these sodas. Now, of course, the doctor says that, well, you shouldn't drink too much soda, right? You shouldn't drink all that soda. If you drink more than one soda per day, every day, that could lead to consequences, right? At the same time, I realize the taste of soda, the taste of the thing that I love so much, I don't think will ever go away. I will always love the taste of ginger ale. In fact, my favorite ginger ale flavor is when Canada Dry has those cranberry ginger ale that they sell during the holiday season. It's my favorite. So I always stock up on that. I get and then Safeway even makes it worse, right? Because you buy 2, you get 2 for free. So I get 4 of those things. Sometimes I get 8 because it's well, family's coming over. And yet at the same time, I have to have some type of self-discipline where I don't drink as much soda. I found kind of a happy medium with fizzy water, right? So I get that same fuzz or that same fizz, but at the same time, it doesn't have the sugar that soda does. So what is the right decision to make? And is there a right answer? We go into these situations sometimes wondering, what the right answer is. Or do we go left or do we go right? Which way will get there the quickest? Or, sometimes if the certain way we choose to go may lead to a bad consequence. Going back to the Dharma School talk, sometimes mistakes occur and that's okay. This doesn't mean, again, that we should not strive to make the best decisions that we can, or at least in terms of how we choose to live our lives. Just because, I want to live my life a certain way doesn't mean that I can't forget about how my life choices will affect others as well. But at the same time, if I live my life in constant fear and live my life that I'm never going to go outside because that would put more carbon into the air. I'm never going to interact with other people because I might get sick. I'm never going to do this. True, I may not put more carbon into the air, or I might not get another person sick, or a person might not get me sick, but then will I truly live an authentic life? Did I make the right decision? Yes, maybe it's true I'm not polluting the air, but then I'm not doing my job as a minister, which is actually meeting and talking with people. The wonderful thing about our teaching is that Amida Buddha never condemns or judges us. So there's actually this thought or this misunderstanding that Amida Buddha is kind of like this judging figure and says, oh, you're all terrible people, or oh, you're all unenlightened beings. But from the realm of the Dharma, we are not judged or ridiculed. We are seen for what we truly are, which is unenlightened beings. This doesn't mean that we're stupid or that we're bad people or that we're sinners, in a sense, I guess, if I were to use a word. But it just means that we are unable to truly see things as they are because we still have this sense of the ultimate self. I am me, you are you. Yet, this is not something that the Buddha judges us for. Okay, so the Buddha is not saying you're all bad people. The Buddha is just saying, I understand what your condition is, just the same as a doctor does. When the doctor takes our blood, when the doctor diagnoses us with something, the doctor is not judging us and saying, you should do this and this, or you are a terrible person. The doctor just says, this is the condition that you have. I can prescribe some medicine, or I can prescribe a treatment for you to help you get better. This is, I think, where we sometimes fall short in terms of the Nembutsu teaching. Kenzo, could you back the slides to the quote that I initially did? Thank you. Yes. It is like offering more wine before the person has become sober, or urging him to take even more poison before the poison has abated. Here's some medicine, so drink all the poison you like. Words like these should never be said. So remember how I was telling you about how much I love cranberry ginger ale? So it's very true. The healthier thing for me to drink is water, or fizzy water. But that doesn't mean that, just because I drink the fizzy water, okay, every fizzy water I drink, that means I can drink more cranberry ginger ale. This is the same thing with the Nembutsu, the teaching that tells us that when we take refuge in Amida Buddha's wisdom and compassion, when we take refuge in the Nembutsu teaching, all of our previous karmic evil list is made not there anymore. And in fact, we are welcome to Amida Buddha's Pure Land as we truly are. Yet at the same time, just because we have a teaching as simple as, say, Namo Amida Butsu, that doesn't mean we can leave the temple and go out and start acting like mean people to other people. Well, I take refuge in this particular teaching, therefore I can act the way that I want to. No, absolutely not. Shinran even himself spoke out against this. And as you could see in Shinran's writing, this was a common problem that he was facing with people who were following the Nembutsu teaching. We all see these advertisements on television about those miracle bodybuilding exercise machines, that miracle diet pill that you take once a day and that you can shed the weight as quickly as that. But are things really that easy? And this goes back to the teaching of Jodo Shinshu being on that razor-thin edge. I think what Shinran Shonin was trying to tell us, all of us, is that we have to constantly be looking and examining ourselves from a very honest point of view. So if I got this miracle diet pill that they're selling on the television, I don't think if I took it every single day, that means I could eat nachos every day, or that means I could eat a hamburger every day. That means I could quit salads entirely. And the problem is that marketing often portrays things that way, doesn't it? That if you take this pill, you don't have to eat your fruits and vegetables anymore. If you take this pill, you don't have to exercise anymore. Right? They're actually advertising or catering to our base instinct of getting the best results without having to do the work or without having to put the time into improving ourselves. Believe it or not, the Nembutsu is actually teaching us the same thing. While the Nembutsu is very easy, right? We just say, put our hands together and say, Namo Amida Butsu. There actually is a little bit more work that goes into that. We have to look deep within ourselves and ask ourselves, is this the teaching that we take refuge in? Does this teaching improve me as a person? Does this teaching assure me that I am going to the Pure Land? So, Kenzo, if you could go ahead and move forward again. Yes, yes, there we go. So just because Amida Buddha does not judge us, right? Just because Amida Buddha and the Dharma does not say we're good people or bad people, therefore here's your reward or here's your punishment, just because we know that we are flawed does not mean that we succumb to the flaws. We are all aware of our flaws and should be well aware of our human nature. This does not give us license to abuse it or use it as an excuse to cause harm. And I think this is where I myself have to realize this teaching most of all. Myself as a minister, right? Just because I'm a minister, that doesn't mean I'm better than you. Just because I am a minister doesn't mean that I know the Dharma better than you. Maybe I know some text a little bit more, but that doesn't mean that I am further down the path of enlightenment than you are. The whole point of Jodo Shinshu is to realize that all of us are embraced by Amida Buddha's wisdom and compassion. The whole point of Jodo Shinshu is to give us comfort in a teaching that lets us know that we are all destined for the Pure Land and that we are all destined for the realm of enlightenment. What a wonderful teaching, I think, that brings us this type of comfort. But with this type of comfort also comes, in a sense, responsibility. Shinran Shonin also stated that we must do our best to turn about ourselves as well. We have to not necessarily be good people, but if we truly took refuge in the teachings, we wouldn't do the things that we know cause harm. Again, sometimes we can't help but make mistakes. Sometimes we can't help but actually take that soda, which is something I did yesterday, actually. Sometimes we can't help it. But at the same time, that doesn't mean we overindulge in it. And that doesn't mean that we use the teaching as an excuse to not try our best and not do our utmost to live a life of Nembutsu. Please join me in Gassho as I read the words of our founder, Master Shinran Shonin. It is like offering more wine before the person has become sober, or urging him to take even more poison before the poison has abated. Here's some medicine, so drink all the poison you like. Words like these should never be said. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Nam Mandavs, Nam Mandavs, Nam.